Features, and you're listening to Show X Live with Ken in a student accommodation all the way in Scotland, and Wade in his white windowless van? Uh-oh, I better get out of here. Enjoy the show!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Show X on VTWProductions.com. You're listening at 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. GMT on this Sunday, the 7th of September. We are coming to you live, both in audio format at www.vtwproductions.com, as well as via our YouTube live stream. If you have not checked out the live video stream, you should get on there right now. Link in the IRC if you're in there live right now joining us, as well as you can find it going through the VTW channel for Versus the World shows on YouTube, and you should be able to find us broadcasting live. So come check it out, come take a watch. So today we are going to have a special show of Show X for you as we have a guest joining us. But before we get things started, I have been advised that we should probably put a disclaimer on today's show and tell you that, hey audience, this show may have some mature content involved in it due to subject that could provide a little bit of emotional aspects to it, as people may find it somewhat charged. We'll go with it that way. So if you have the young ears and are not sure as to what may partake or may happen here shortly, just keep that in mind. But with that, we will start out things in a lighter way and go ahead and jump into
dysfunctional deviations.
And we're going to try to keep things short today so we can get to the heart of the matter, as this is a week or several weeks of a lot of gamer angst and interest. But to start things out with dysfunctional deviations, Ken, anything you'd like to bring up just specifically for what you've been up to this week?
Hello, sir. Does this include my geek cred? Are we going to throw this all in one?
No, I'll do geek cred in the proper order, so just giving you the chance.
I'll give you a little story, actually. So last night, Kitten was telling me she was going out for a night out, and I was like, yeah, no problem, get a night free, gonna play some games, it's gonna be fun, I'm gonna go to bed when I want, I'm not gonna do the dishes, it's gonna be great, and so I'll do all this and have lots of fun, I'll play some games, play some League, and stuff like that, and then I go to bed, wake up this morning, and get a call from Kitten, and I think, oh, she'll just be telling what time she's gonna be home today, that's cool, because she's been staying with her friends, no problem, and she goes, so you're probably gonna be mad at me. I'm like, what did you do? And you know, she's on right now, so I'm gonna think like, oh no, did she kiss a guy? Oh no, what happened? You know, you're worrying completely utterly, and I start panicking inside my mind. And it turns out she went to Italy.
What?
So she says to me, yeah, I'm in Rome right now. So me and a couple of friends got together and just decided to go to Rome. I was like, you are kidding me, no. This is like, no, honestly, I'm calling from Rome right now. I'm staying on a balcony looking out at a city with a coffee in my hand. And I was like, no way. Be safe, have fun. That's what I said. I was just like, okay, I'll accept this. And yeah, she arrived home 2 hours later and was like, yeah, I was kidding. So I was kind of
nice.
I just believed that. I was like, well, you can get flights for like £70, you know, it's like $100. So
being that you're already over there, I can imagine that could be a real thing. And yeah, wow. So when you said that, I was kind of like, oh, that could happen. And I don't know how you take that, good, bad, or ugly, but hey, as long as she's gonna be safe.
It's probably the same more like Vegas for you guys. Like if I hear like somebody's going to Vegas for the weekend, I'm like, no way, that's freaking cool, Vegas. But then I remember it's like it's not as far away. It's the same as Europe size, you know.
Oh yeah, $100, dude.
Yeah,
if you're willing to sit, if you're willing to sit cattle car, no problem.
Oh, of course. Especially with the short flight times, just for like an intercontinental flights.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
no problem.
90 minutes.
Yeah, I'd happily do that. Man, Vegas, that'd be so cool. Do you remember a few years ago when we organized the VTW Con in Vegas? I was totally planning on going. I had the money set aside and everything. I was like ready to book my flights, and then I realized I'm like 19 here.
Yeah.
So I can drink, I can gamble, I can have kids, I can get married, I can do all these things right now. But in America, I'm still a child. So there's no point in me going. So I ended up not going. That's why I didn't show up. And it was such a shame.
Aww.
Freaking America.
Well, so it's a good thing you didn't do it, because otherwise you would have been quite disappointed. Because we were not doing kid-friendly activities most of the time we were there. We were gambling, we were drinking, we were running around.
Since we've got the child filter off today, so up yours, Mr. Wayne.
Hey, you said it yourself.
Filter.
By our standards, you were a
looking
child.
at picture perfect back dimples.
Oh gosh, yes. I think we have pictures from that too somewhere.
I think we do.
I think I need to see these at some point.
Pretty sure we put them out there at one point.
Wait,
but
we have
yeah.
to put a sexism trigger warning on this now.
Ah, see. Well, you didn't
Damn
say
it.
what those
We're
were
going to
attached to.
anyway.
Yeah, that's not going to help preempt this discussion at all. All right.
Yeah. So that's been my week. Nothing particularly interesting.
So
just
good
working
prank
fun,
by
so, yeah.
Kitten. I definitely give her that. Definitely.
Yeah, I was impressed.
So quickly to you, Octale, Mr. Todd. Good to have you on the show again.
Hey, it's good to be here.
So for everyone who goes in there and listens, yes, we have the amazing Octale joining us today to
Yeah.
provide content for us. But on that light note, what have you been up to since last we've talked to you?
Wow! So, I stumbled across something on Netflix, which is unbelievable. They made a From Dusk Till Dawn series.
Oh, I was going to say, what number movie would it be at now? But
No,
series?
it's a series. Robert Rodriguez is involved in it, but they took all of the characters that you remember, but it's none of the same actors.
Of course. Yeah.
And it's the same basic plot of the original From Dusk Till Dawn movie with a little added, stuff to it, and they turned it into 10-hour-long episodes.
Really?
So if you have any interest in From Dusk Till Dawn lore, I can't imagine why you would, but if you did, it was pretty sweet.
Oh, nice.
Say,
So,
I was
surprisingly good?
I was shocked. Like, the biggest name in it is Don Johnson, who is playing the role of Earl. What's his name? Earl McGraw, the sheriff that gets shot in the first scene.
Oh, yeah. What?
Yeah.
Is this
Yeah.
a
Is it bad that I've not
prequel?
seen this film?
This has to be like a prequel then, right?
No, because it starts exactly the same place that the movie starts, kind of, except that first liquor store scene takes like 2 or 3 episodes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
No,
I mean they deviate a little bit, right?
yeah, but they'd have to, you figure.
And so it was really cool to go from what's like an hour 40-minute, hour 50-minute movie to a 10-hour series and see, oh, they're going to embellish on this and this and that, and they're doing some flashbacks, and they're going to go into, Richie's backstory, Richie Gecko's backstory, and Seth Gecko's backstory, and Pandemonium Santa Monico's backstory, and they started going into all these backstories, and it was wild. And of course, it's a television series and not a movie, so some of the stuff that
You can only go into so much, right? Except, was
so
it made for Netflix, or?
No, I don't think it's a Netflix original.
Okay.
I'm not sure what channel it ended up on.
No
But
idea.
it's certainly not identified as a Netflix original. And I mean, they did compromise a little bit, right? So they don't use the line, the Juliette Lewis line from the movie.
Gotcha.
Because the daughter of the preacher is 17 in the TV show, which would be a little wrong if they did that exactly.
Yes.
So the line that they use is something like, Richie, would you do me a favor and take off my bikini for me? Something like that.
Okay,
Right?
so not nearly.
It's the same kind of thing.
Yeah, but not nearly as scathing or bad. So
No, not nearly as bad as the Juliette Lewis line.
Nice.
So I watched all of that. I watched all of the original Justice League cartoon.
Those are good. Anyone who watched, if you haven't watched, it doesn't matter if it's Marvel or DC. Screw whether characters were good or bad in comics. If you watch the animated things that are available out there, they're really good.
So the only thing that I was a little upset by was the ending.
Okay.
of the original Justice League. Like, the story arc was good, and like the overall story where these people start developing relationships with each other was kind of cool. Like, Wonder Woman and Batman kind of have this thing between each other, but they really don't explore that ever in detail. And Green Lantern and Hawkgirl kind of start a romantic thing, and then that falls apart. But I didn't care for the ending at all of what ultimately ends up being the end of the series, which bothered me a little bit. But again, that's like eating a $45 steak and potatoes and having something be wrong with a creme brulee at the end.
Yeah, it's just the finish was like, I heard all this, that was me.
Yeah.
You know, I don't understand why. I don't know about you guys, but when I see something actiony or anything to do with superheroes in general, if I have something to do with freaking romances and stuff, I always feel like they're trying to force it in there because you can't have a TV series that includes people without having some kind of romance in it. And I think it's so out of place in certain things. I mean, I don't know for that series specifically, I've not seen it, but for example, I don't know. Like, even just the Avengers and superhero films and the likes, I feel it's kind of out of place having any romance there, you know?
So in Justice League, I thought they did a really good job. When they started the sort of thread with Batman and Wonder Woman, Wonder Woman was sort of undercover, and Bruce Wayne was attending the same event, and he cut in while Wonder Woman was dancing with the bad guy to try and make some space, and like they started talking while they were dancing, and it kind of turned into a thing. Right, between the two of them. The Hawkgirl and Green Lantern thing ended up being very organic to the point where the forced bit of it was they did a Christmas episode.
Okay.
And Hawkgirl and Green Lantern end up getting in a bar fight on another planet on Christmas.
Okay.
Like, I don't even know.
That's beautiful.
That's a little different.
I cried, honestly, because, you know, when it's me, bar fights on Christmas are where it's at.
Of course.
So, the ending of that storyline was what bugged me. But anyway, I enjoyed it. And really, I've been playing a lot of Binding of Isaac. And the pre-order for Binding of Isaac Rebirth just went up on Steam this week. So I spent my $14.99, or I guess for me, because I owned the game originally, $10.04, and I have my pre-order for Binding of Isaac Rebirth. So that's going to come out on Steam early November of this year.
And that one, so what? I'm trying to think what I've heard about that version. Is it something that's kind of? I thought it had like a continuous mode or something.
So the original Binding of Isaac was done in Flash.
Okay.
Right? And they jammed absolutely everything into Flash that you possibly could, to the point that there's at least one item that doesn't even work, because they just met the limits of what you could do in Flash.
Okay.
So what they did for Rebirth is they got a development team on board, and they coded it in something other than Flash. So there are more items, there are going to be more things that you can do. Like in the original game, if you got 3 pieces of the dead cat, you could turn yourself into a cat.
Okay.
There are going to be more things like that. So you'll be able to turn yourself into a cat, you'll be able to turn yourself theoretically into the dead dog. Which there was an item in the original Binding of Isaac. There's going to be a lot of that kind of stuff.
Oh, nice. So they're expanding it further than what the original had, and so it'll be the original game, but with more, and it should run much cleaner and everything else.
More items, bigger rooms, going to run smoother, local co-op, all kinds of stuff.
Oh, nice. Okay, so everybody keep an eye out for that one, because I know you've been streaming the heck out of Binding of Isaac over the last months.
Yeah.
Local co-op's so rare these days as well. That's a great thing to add in.
Oh, I agree, totally. I agree, totally.
Strange.
All right, so very cool. Let's see. So with that, so that we keep time for a real discussion, I'll jump into what I've been doing. Let's see. So So anyone who's watching the video should be able to at least see it. And I do have to show off two things. One, the shirt that I'm wearing, which has logo on it, and that's specifically from, as I drop things, from the gaming tag that we run on Battlefield 4 for VTW, for our gamers. And on the back of the shirts, we put VTW, although my W somewhat died from the activities. And so in it, El Campo, Team El Campo, which is really VTW, but my friend El Campo, his wife, and I participated yesterday in the Tough Mudder event up in Snowmass, Colorado, next to Aspen. And for those who hadn't heard, Tough Mudder is this ridiculous event where you basically pay a lot of money that gets donated to the Wounded Warrior Fund to basically go torture yourself for many hours in the day.
Woo!
Yeah. So nice thing is, I'm here, I'm on the air, so I at least survived the Tough Mudder. And the other piece of that is I have my orange headband, which means I completed it, as well as got a cool shirt with it as well. So yeah, essentially it was 11.1 miles of I would say running, but no, there was not much running. With the trail that went up and down the ski slopes in Snowmass, and consisted of, I forget how many actual events it had, how many different tasks you had to do, but they ranged from everything from low crawling under barbed wire to, through like a muddy trench, to jumping off of a large platform that was, I forget, like 15, 20 feet in the air into a 12-foot pool of mountainously cool water.
Well, you've already got practice at that anyway, so that's good.
It was cold. To picking up a teammate and carrying them up the hill from one point to another, to grabbing a large log and carrying it up and around a hill and back down and dumping it before continuing on. Things like that were kind of tame. But the initial part of the race, and it was going into this, I've had an ankle that's a little tender because I twisted it really bad a year ago. Mostly good, I can do things, but I put my ankle brace on just because I knew. And then El Campo's wife had her knee brace on because it was a little tender, and she had jacked up one of her wrists a while back, and she had sprung her ankle a couple weeks prior, but was mostly good there. We're like, well, let's do this. And the problem is El Campo loves to run and is really good at it. So, sorry, Campo, but we slowed him down a lot. He probably could have finished an hour earlier than we did as a group.
Oh, no.
But I don't feel bad for it because I at least competed and did every single event. But we ran through, and the first thing you do is you're running around kind of the main town at Snowmass towards the bottom. And we did about 2 miles or so before the first real events. And the first one was kind of nothing, but then we ran into one, which was the Arctic Enema. And the Arctic Enema was one of these large rubbish containers that you can basically fit on the back of a semi. So it's one of those really big refuse kind of containers, just big metal container, about this length of a 18-wheeler. And it was filled with water, and that water was then filled with ice. So all that ice bucket challenge crap is nothing. I'll tell you that right now. Even though I did mine, that was nothing.
Yeah, that's right. Try dumping a semi-truck full of it on yourself.
Well, no. Try jumping into it, so you have to submerge yourself. Because what it was
I know that feeling.
Well, so even worse, Ken, because you climbed up these steps and then you had to jump into the water. There was a board in front of you that had barbed wire over it that was a foot into the water, so you had to go under the board, so you now fully submerge yourself, swim to another board, go under it, then swim to the railing to get out. And the problem is it was so cold that when I jumped into it, it took my breath away, and my legs after running that felt like they were on fire. It was so cold. And I was very fortunate because through the whole course, I never locked up. My muscles never cramped somehow. And I know a lot of people who did, but got through that, sort of started jogging afterwards because it took a while to heat back up after that thing. Kept running, and then a bunch of, like I said, other obstacles. You're running up the hills kind of constantly because right before you get to the water challenge, they go and it shows you like the lowest point on the course. You're at 8,050 feet or something.
Oh.
And it's like, woohoo! Wait, that means everything from here is going up. Awesome. And so you keep moving basically up and down, but mostly up the mountain because they put the majority of the events at about 9,000 something feet. Somewhere in the middle of the slopes. And I felt the altitude. It took my breath away to the point where I was walking a lot of this course. But I mean, trying to keep speedy, but still just like, whew, I cannot keep running. But went up to in some of the rougher courses that I definitely want to talk about where they have this thing called the Mud Mile, which is just a mile of continuous events. And in those events, like you start with going under a log that has electric wire from like a electric fence hanging down. And it's only got about a foot of clearance, if that, underneath this log. And so you have to kind of like scoot under it so that these wires will touch you. And then on the other side of it, there's this big mud pool that goes forward about another 30 meters or so that you have to crawl through to get out, which seems mostly mundane. When we queued up for it, kind of watched a bunch of people as they attacked this event and ran, and they would slide under the log as best they could to try to avoid getting stuck, getting shocked. And so I was like, all right, watching. I actually did pretty good because I noticed some guys on the left side of the event where it's like, every one of them that's sliding through, it doesn't look like they're getting up going, oh man, I got shocked. Maybe that side's not getting them as bad. So sure enough, I dove under that one and nope, I didn't get shocked. Woohoo! Good decisions. Good being observant. However,
Nice.
in order to make sure I could get under it, I really dove. And on the other side of that dip you're going into, there's a little berm of dirt coming up, which I went face first into, and thus gashed my nose. And anyone in the video wall, you might be able to see, I'll get up close to the camera. But
yeah, I see it. I saw you.
basically nose planted myself into the dirt, which actually was my only real injury, but that did not feel good. To add insult to injury, I get up and then climb into this mud pool, which is about up to my knees, and don't realize, because I wasn't paying nearly enough attention to the people in front of me, I was just worried about the shock, that every about 3 or 4 feet through this mud pool, they had dug a trench that was another like 2 or 3 feet long that went down another 3 feet. But it was all an even pool of thick mud. So you'd start like, walking through with your up to your legs, and next thing you know, you take a step and just drop up to about 4 feet worth of mud. And the first step I took where I missed that, I went face first and almost hit the raised piece of the next side. And so just like,
did you bring your GoPro?
boom! I did not bring my GoPro because I was very afraid it was going to be damaged. However, after going through the course, I realized I probably could have, and there were a lot of people that had them. But that's okay. There is going to be video out there from this one because a lot of people did do it, and you'll be able to see some of these events.
I'm not just events. I'm interested in seeing you hit your face in mud.
Well, so yeah, no, that one was
hilarious.
Well, and then Campo's wife made the thing where she was stepping. I was trying to tell her, hold up, there's a pit here, and she just stepped into it, fell forward, and her knee caught the other end of like the underground berm coming up on a rock that was in it, on her bad knee. And that was one of this mud mile piece where she was hurt at that point, but we were able to get through it all. And I started doing a scouting thing essentially where I kept track of her, and every time I would go first and say, all right here it's going to drop again. Because the Tough Mudder is really a team event. It's not about time, although I think there's some competitive people that go early in the morning. It's about working together, because there are events in this that no single person could ever get through. There are definitely some. So we get through all that mud. I was trying to think, there's some other ones where you had to go over and under logs and stuff that's just very tiring at altitude to kind of have to jump and grab and go over. There's a set, one of the earlier ones also was monkey bars, but the monkey bars didn't go just straight across. It was about, I'd say it was at least 10 or 15 meters long, but it went up at an angle, like a 30-degree angle, and then back down, and had a pool of about 4 feet of muddy water underneath it to land in. And at the highest point, you're probably a good 15 feet above the water. And so that I was able to get across fully. Unfortunately, again, this is one that Campo's wife didn't make it. She got up to the highest point, and then her grip went because she had gloves on at the time, and she dropped into the mud. I had to stop at that point because I didn't want to go over her while I was hanging, because I was feeling pretty tired. So I just hung there for a minute, because the worst thing would have been if I had fallen on top of her.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, I let her clear all the way, and then I continued and barely made it down. Oh, it was so tough. El Campo had a problem because there was a guy next to him at the same time that kept swinging side to side, and so the guy's legs kept getting caught in his, and he was doing everything he could not to like kick the guy, like, back off, you punk, let me do this, and got through. But we, got through that event. The cold water one, that was, for me, it was like Navy boot camp. I jumped off a big thing into a big plunge of water, cleaned me off some. It was frigid because this wasn't icy, but they were using the mountain water that they usually use to create snow during the winter to fill all these things. And so it was cold. Got out of there, ran up. There was another water event where it was a lake that was up there, and you went in from a side of it, slid into the water, and then had to go under these barrels. And if you went near, you could kind of stay up to about your chest height, but if you went any further, you had to swim it because it went deeper. And so I went to the outside, had to swim it under these barrels, back up, swim, under a barrel, back up, kind of thing. Stuff, again, just cold. And I was wearing this shirt, so long sleeve shirt with shorts and shoes, and it's just like, man. So super tiring events throughout.
Oh, man. So why do you hate yourself so much to do this?
I died. So again, only because I made the mistake of promising I'd do it if El Campo ran the Boulder with me, which was fun, not torture. Because that has like bands playing and there's snacks on the side and people doing keg stands and stuff like that.
Pain.
Yeah, this one was...
Seriously, dude, yard of guts for doing that.
Those
things are not easy.
Well,
there's a guy on one of my old programs at work that does them, and he's doing CrossFit to train for them. And he gets done with those, and he's like, "Dude, this is the hardest thing I've ever done." By far.
Well, that's the thing. The Tough Mudders, and they're all around the world, and so you can check one out locally, very likely, or travel to one. Exactly. We had a few people that did come up from sea level. I give them mad props. We had a guy come up from Seattle, not in my group, but people you talk to afterwards in the bars and stuff that you kind of share war stories with. Another guy I met, who talk about whatever later, but a Canadian guy from Saskatchewan who came up for it. And so those kind of guys, I give them props because going from like essentially sea level or close up to at least 8,000 to 10,000 feet to do this kind of activity, ridiculous. And they do talk about this being one of the hardest Tough Mudders in the world because of the altitude. Yeah. And it changes each year because last year's was at Breckenridge, and I think the year before that was they go between different ski slopes and such, and so it's always a little different. Other things of note for mine was they did have, you get up to altitude, do all these things. There's another challenge where you start going down from where they claimed the highest altitude on the course was at 9,100 something feet, which I still don't believe is true. Because as you go down, you kind of work your way somewhat lightly. And at this point, I was so tired that downhill was worse than uphill for me. It felt like my knees were going to explode out the front. Like each of my kneecaps were just done. And so I was doing a lot of sideways going down the hills very slowly or walking backwards at some points just because my knees were thrashed. But then we turn around and we get to this point where it's like, I was like, man, I swear I remember earlier going up a big one, seeing these guys going straight up one of the ski slopes, and we hadn't got to it yet. So I was like, where is that? Where's that? And you get to this bottom area where it looks like, oh, I just go across here because there's a little road. And then as you get up to that point at the road and you see people ahead of you, you realize there's a turn right in front of you. And you look at the turn, you turn right, and you're looking straight up the mountain. And it's like, yep, you got to go up there. And it's kind of like a quarter mile of straight vertical climb. Not enough that I had to go to my hands, but just short of. And that, I shuffled up that whole thing. And it was the only place I had to stop twice, just to kind of let people faster than me go past. But I was not jogging or running that thing. I was step, and keeping track of each foot. Because I saw people go a little fast and start sliding, like they'd misstep and almost fall. And that was one, if you lose your footing there, you were going back to the beginning. And so, took my time with that. But
insane, man.
Up that, well, the worst part is you get to the top, then turn around and have to go straight back down. And again, down was hurting me worse than up. Up was tiring as all get out, but down was pain because of my legs.
No, I remember 20 years ago on a school-sponsored trip to Mexico City, we ran up the Temple of the Moon.
Okay.
And Mexico City's at 7,500 feet.
And
so you're running up this, was it Aztec temple? And those steps are not designed by modern standards, right?
Oh,
so
God,
they're real thin and real tall.
Yeah, very treacherous.
So we ran up that sucker. And then stood up there and went, wow, this is cool. Oh crap, now we have to go down.
Oh, tell me you went down that thing backwards.
No.
Did you go facing forward?
We walked down it forwards, but it was one of those, like, the last, I'd say, 30 feet was I'm going to stop here, and I'm waiting for everybody else to get out of the way.
Gotcha.
Because once I get going,
I can't stop.
I'm not stopping, and I'm still an athlete at this point, so I'm 6'4", 240, and an offensive lineman. So
yeah, you're going to take anybody else out.
It's like Juggernaut. Once I get momentum, like I can't be stopped except by the Incredible Hulk.
It's your job.
So, right,
Nice.
yeah, so it's what I'm supposed to do. Like, find me somebody who plays rugby and they can stop me.
Oh, ouch. So no, I know that feeling because we had some people behind us that I had to clear off to the side because there were people running it, and I didn't personally see anyone bite it, but I saw people that almost did, and I was just like, oh.
You're running up that hill at 91 or 88 or whatever.
Yeah.
Way worse than even that.
So no, it was ridiculous. It was the other things that happened. So to finalize this one for me with the Tough Mudder, the other big event that people always talk about are the electric ones. And if you've been a repeat mudder, you get different colored bands and you go as a Legionnaire. So you actually go through and they put a slightly off course that's harder. So you take a slide turn once or twice and you have this whole other set of events you have to do.
Yay.
Yeah, exactly. So these are people that really love themselves. But with them, they had more electricity in one of theirs. But the end of the mudder for everybody, right by the finish line, there's a couple things. There's one where, the other ones. There's, towards the end, they got some more walls that you had to clear. And what I ended up doing, there's also this big, in the mudder thing, a big mud pit that you'd get into the pit and there was like a 6-foot wall above you. Well, it's hard to say. You could reach the top with like a hand from where you were in the mud, but it was just a dirt wall. So you'd have to try to find a way to scale it, which is one that you had to have help. So you made these trains of people where you'd give people footholds and they would climb over or they'd get on top of the berm and then they'd reach down and help and someone else would help you up. So it was this big team effort to get people around it. I ended up helping a lot because there were a lot of teams that had just like little girls in the team.
Oy.
And they were not trying to support each other. And it was kind of like, they were just looking at this wall like, I don't know what to do. It was like, how about this? I'll put my hand here, you step on him, and I will help boost you to the top, and my friend up there will pull you up. And so we kept doing that.
Little girls, you're saying, at this event? You're
no,
picking them up.
No.
Oh
but
my.
Smaller women, yes, because you have to be 18 to do this thing with liabilities.
Okay.
Stop it. And so, but then we would do that until another large, like, hefty gentleman would come, and then he would help me up, and then I would work to help him up the wall. And then I'd leave him on top to help ferry other people over. And we did that to get through that. And that one had like 4 or 5 of these walls you had to go through, which was a lot of work. Towards the end, similar kind of thing, but it was just wood walls that you could go to yourself and kind of, if you get on the ledge and jump over it, I was able to vault it myself. But again, a lot of these ladies that were going up there didn't have the upper body strength because you could only reach it and have your legs like half bent to try to then jump and push yourself over. And it wasn't from the ground. It was from like a little beam they had partway up the wall that you could do that with. From the ground, you couldn't even touch the top. And so what we did there is I ended up making myself a ladder and put my arm down and told people to like step on my hands, then step on my shoulder and climb over. And did that with these groups of people several times.
You're too nice, man. I'd just be like, okay, thanks for letting me up now. I'm going to push you off, man, because I'm going to do it.
Well, it was. I took to heart the idea that they said this was a group event and it's not about time, that everyone just is to complete the event, because that's all I wanted to do. I didn't care about time. That's why I was walking. But I helped people over that, and then the last one of those kinds was the half pipe, like you see on Ninja Warrior and stuff like that. But a nice one that just ends straight, not going back on itself. So that one I was able to jump up on my own. But in a lot of these, the reason I was helping was because Campo's wife could not do these things herself as well, so we were already helping her over. And so then it'd just be like, well, you 3 ladies look lost here. Let's help you over as well. And then we'll continue. But we were able to do the half pipe like that as well. Actually, I was surprised how well we did. But the final event, the one at the bottom of the hill that everyone gets to see, is the, what is it called? The electroshock therapy. And what this event is a big mud pit that is completely uneven ground. Some of it's hard. Most of it's kind of soggy and wet. And it's not like a flat thing. It's got a bunch of rough terrain through it that's probably a good 10 meters across. Or a little more than that, but hanging throughout it, it's got the scaffolding over it, and it's holding these electrodes down throughout it, all over the place. And they tell you specifically, some of them have as much as 10,000 volts running through them.
Hi.
Not
That's
all,
like taser level, man.
but some. And so what we did, and I didn't see anyone die in it. I've heard some stories about some people had some rough times. But we locked arms, put Campo's wife in the middle, and each of us on each side holding an arm in front of our faces, and marched through it kind of fast, in kind of a quick jog as best we could to not lose our footing. And we knew we were going to get shocked, but this way we were hoping we would hold each other up, because the thing that a lot of people do is they take a shock and they collapse, and a lot of people eat dirt at that point, eat mud. Because it shocks their body and they go boom right down. So we were able to maintain balance between the three of us. But I took 3 shocks specifically that I know of between the group. Because if any of us got hit, we all got hit. And the way I felt it is whatever foot I had planted in the mud, it was like my calf instantly just went bam and locked up as that shock hit me. Just whack. And it makes you stop for a second like, I don't want to keep going. But just kept trudging, and took 3 of those. Campo took one of those that when it hit his arm, it swung the wire up and caught him in his cheek. And so he got shocked by the same one twice, once on his face, and he said his jaw just went bam, shut. But we were able to get through that. I mentioned that one because everyone can see it. It's real close to the finish line, so people can just walk up and watch people finishing. Because there were some people who just tried to run through and they just got shocked and went straight down because their body seized up. As well as there's at least 1 or 2 guys that did it kind of like bosses. Where there was one guy that apparently went out as, I don't know what you call it, but the Iron T, where he just held his arm straight out and just walked through it. And took multiple hits, but didn't stop. He just kind of boom, boom, and you could see him kind of just, and he just kept walking. Damn! That guy was amazing. No challenge. Another guy went there, and people were making fun of him because he was wearing short shorts, kind of a hot pink. He had long hair. He was fairly built, but he looked really just kind of like, hey. And he was going through it dancing. He was like dancing back and forth, like all lackadaisy, like aha, kind of. And then he'd get hit and be like, dah, and then keep dancing and get hit and keep dancing. And so people kind of gave him props that he looked ridiculous. But he took it like a man, because he just kept going like, wow. So, yes. Anyhow, that was overall my Tough Mudder experience. Good times. Yikes, but good time. So, just had to get that out there because it's fresh. We represented VTW, and a lot of people asked us on the course what it meant. It said Versus the World, it's a podcast thing, and they're all like, oh, that's cool. So, that was fun. But with that, I'm going to transition it now. And we're going to talk for you, Ken, because you said you had a little bit to say, into our Geek Cred section and try to get through this quick. So,
sure.
I'm a geek. Are you a geek? Geek Cred, level up!
What do you have for us, Ken, since I really don't have anything I was going to talk about Geek today?
Don't worry, I'll fly through. All I wanted to mention was we played a little bit of LoL this week. I've been trying my hand at ranked solo queue. That is a mixed bag. So... my best role, usually, at least in normal games, is support. I do some amazing support work. So I went to a normal 5v5, not a ranked, and did really well. I was like Soraka or something, and I kicked ass. I was getting loads of kills. The team was getting more. I had like 1 million assists. Just did so well. I had a great build, and the enemy team was just like, damn, Soraka, you're holding that team together. You're carrying the team. I was like, yeah, I know, bro. Cheers. It was great, like one of those games. Then I was like, I think I'm ready. I feel confident. I'm happy to go and do the freaking ranked with Soraka. So I had Soraka runes in, had Soraka training time, Soraka masteries. I was prepared and ready to go. And I go in, and I am doing pretty well. And the rest of the team are flailing around like a goldfish on a carpet. Just freaking horrific. And I was just...
You know how they keep saying, Ken, that you can't carry as a support?
And yeah, that's what I was feeling like. I was like, why don't I just play ADC? Why do I always try and play support? I should just play ADC. So next game, I just said, screw it. Ashe, runes, Ashe masteries, Ashe, let's go. And I go in, and I get like 18 kills, 5 deaths or something, and just carry through the whole match until they surrender in a ranked match. And I was like, damn, I need to play ADC more. And then I tried again and failed. So, ups and downs. So I lost 2 out of 3. Not without trying. I think I did well on each one. So Just gotta keep trying. I think my next stage is to actually watch some professional matches. I've never really put any time into that
If you
ever
were to
before.
watch the LCS, you start seeing what the meta is, and you can kind of see some of the effective ways people are playing. And that's a lot of how you will see people who are really trying will try to play that way as well. They'll try to emulate it. So that's a way to improve yourself. But it does help to have kind of people you can count on that you know how they play. That's probably the most effective thing. If you can get a true 5-man, or even if you're just doing a bottom lane duo queuing with someone that you know you can trust how they play, that is probably the easiest way to do it. Because at least if you can carry a lane, you can affect the play. It's hard when you're one person trying to do just a piece. So
yeah.
that's tough. It's just like trying to carry as a jungle. Good luck.
Yeah, know that feeling as well. I also played Hecarim, did quite well with him actually, but you know, the problem is I find when I play with people with like friends, is actually worse. I think it's like when it's ARAM, it's a mix, right? Sometimes I do well, sometimes I do bad. But when it's just random people, I do really well and the team sucks. So I don't know. I don't know how it works, but
So the key there
I'll
is
just keep trying and
you have to have people that are all at least at your level, and that's very difficult to do. That's tough. So, okay. Did you have anything else geekery you wanted to mention?
Yes, I've started getting my friend Graham. Well, actually, he asked to get into it, and I said, "Well, man, if you're going to jump into this game, I'm going to need to as well." World of Warcraft. So, last night we hopped on, and he installed all and stuff, and we started playing for the first time. And he says, "Oh, this really reminds me of RuneScape." I was like, "What?" I mean, I know it's an MMO, but it's not RuneScape of all things. There's nothing like it. He's like, "Well, you know, it's just I guess it's the same kind of style with like, you know, skills and stuff." I was like, "Okay, yeah, I guess." And he started saying, "Okay, so how about do you think it's more like is this what Warcraft 3 was like? Pretty much the same sort of game?" And I was like, "No, it's not. It's like again a completely different kind of game." He's like, "Oh, okay." The graphics are quite good though. I'm like, "Yes, they are, Graham." Okay. And over some time, he started getting more used to it. He's been playing a lot of LoL, so he wouldn't call himself a gamer. He calls himself a LoL player, right? So he was kind of like confused by the concept of being able to having to like move your character, having thousands of spells to use, controlling professions and all this other stuff. And it's not per game. It's like just one constant game. It's not like per level sort of thing. He was very confused by that idea. So, he played a little bit, we got to like level 12 or so, and I think it went quite well actually. He said he was really enjoying it. He said he's thinking of picking up the game and putting the money into it. I'm watching the cringe on Wayne's face, and I said to him, "That's fantastic, man." I mean, like, he's playing a warrior tank, I'm going to be playing a healer monk for the first time. So it's a good experience to try out, and I keep saying to him, like, once we're out of like Durotar, which is the most disgusting place in the entire of like Azeroth, you'll enjoy it a bit more. And he's saying, "Oh, I'm already enjoying it." I was like, "Even better! You'll love it then." So,
Durotar was not the best place to do your early leveling experience. It has to be said.
Yeah, the same horrific backdrop of like just a red, bony, dry landscape and a couple hills. That's it. That's it everywhere and wrapped.
So,
the old Desolus.
Imagine if you're me and you get to and Wayne stole my thunder. Imagine if you're me and you get to be about level 32 and everybody says, "Oh, screw that, I'm not going to Desolus," and out of spite you say, "Well, screw that, I will then," and you go,
"Oh yeah, that's where I leveled."
Oh God.
It's better nowadays, to be fair, after the Cataclysm. It is a bit better.
Oh yeah, they realized nobody liked it, and so this was their opportunity to erase it and try to bring some greenery and such.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I think there's still a bit of, like, that kind of sort of brought back some fun to it for me, because we're trying it again. It's like we're playing again. I'm teaching him how to play, and I'm like stealing and living vicariously through his first experience. And I'm savoring it and enjoying it, just like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna enjoy the leveling experience. You're gonna try all these classes." And you know what? Trying to explain the game to somebody who's never played it before is pretty tough. I mean, I was trying to explain some of the lore and explaining how there's so many different spells and classes and races and how they each have their own specializations. Usually have 3 each. Certain people can be tanks, certain people can be healers, certain people can do DPS, but not all 3. But a couple classes can. But Death Knights start in their own area. That's the only class that starts in their own area. Every other place is a race. And I just kept going on and on. And I realized I was talking for like 20 minutes about this thing.
You were wasting your time. None of that matters.
It does,
because there is no leveling in the game. All you have to do is say, "Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to get you to raiding," because that's all this game's about. Or PvP. You got 2 choices. You can either raid or you can do PvP, arenas. What do you want to do? And with
Our
that,
achievements.
there's like 1 or 2 roles in those levels that we can talk about, and that's pretty much it. Everything else is really just fluff, and Blizzard doesn't care about. So, you're wasting your time trying to explain the game.
You see, this is why I can always go back to the game, because I enjoy leveling. I enjoy alts and trying new
Yes,
things.
but
and
that
so
takes
that's why I have so many high levels.
like 3 or 4 days at a time now. Max level, ding. Next.
Constantly, yes.
Max level, ding. Okay.
That's the funny
so
thing, right? Any other game out there that you pay this much for, the base game's like £30, right? And then you get paid monthly. So if you got 2 months, that's like a normal, for at least the UK, a normal PS4, Xbox One, or PC game from a store. And then if that you get with 20 hours, right? So that's 2 months of gameplay in this game, and I think you can get so much more than just 20 hours out of it. Would you not agree with that?
I think you used to be able to.
I think we've already spent that, so it's different for us now.
In terms of amount of gameplay per dollar spent, yes, but that's somewhat dependent upon the amount of free time you have, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Because that's the other side.
So-
Yeah, if I buy a game, I buy it once. A regular game, where an MMO that has a subscription, you're paying constantly whether you're playing or not.
Right. So, as an example, I have games in my Steam list that I haven't played yet. By the same token, Civilization 5 has 525 hours played.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true.
Well, and that's the thing. We all have games like that. There's always go-tos we have that, either I played it for free. It's like friends of mine who truly made their money's worth, right? Playing a game like Warframe or something, which is free to play, and having 800 hours into it.
Right.
Which,
or
infinite
somebody
scale.
who's playing, to invoke the worst CCG on planet Earth, somebody who's playing Hearthstone free to play. Right?
You're such a hipster, Octale. You know that. You hate everything that's popular. I think that's what it is. You don't like COD, the most popular FPS. You don't like Hearthstone, the most popular CCG.
I just hate things that are I hate things that are badly designed. That's all.
So the most popular things are all badly designed.
Yes. Yes, they are, Brett.
Okay.
Yes, they are.
But
just stirring the pot a little bit.
I could write you 10 pages on how League of Legends has destroyed the MOBA. And I'm organizing my thoughts on that. I don't know how that one's actually going to play out. I need to start putting pen to paper on it, but I'm a ways away from doing that one. But it's going to start with Twisted Tree Line and a basketball court. So there's a spoiler.
Interesting.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, now I'm trying to imagine it based off that alone, but I can kind of see where that could go.
League of Legends is the most popular MOBA, so it must be bad.
Well, so aside from that, so we can get to the real topic of today's discussion, because gamers, what are those?
I'll stop teasing.
But
I'll stop teasing.
I do want to say that the one thing from WoW is that a lot of people have gone on the beta test servers, and they've already seen the Robin character that Blizzard put in for Robin Williams, a genie that comes out of a magical app and starts quoting some of his famous lines from Aladdin. And so people have shown that they did react, and they did put that in there, and still supposedly there may be 2 more characters that they put in that could be references to his play as Miss Doubtfire, and the other one being him himself, I believe. So good job, Blizzard, for that.
I heard
That's
it was
a big head nod to them.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. What I heard was that it was the genie, Mrs. Doubtfire, and Mork. I think they're calling it.
It might have been Mork. That's the thing. It's either Mork or himself, so I'm not sure about the last one. So we'll see.
Wow. Who's that for? The septuagenarian gamer? Like, nobody under a certain age that starts with like a 4 gets that reference.
Hey, I remember Mork.
I watched Mork and Mindy.
I barely get that reference.
Oh, that's it. Could I quote it? Not really. Would I recognize certain things? Maybe. But problem is, if it's just text like it is in most of the stuff in WoW, I'll never get it, because from him it was more his voice and the way he said things. Because the lines themselves, I'd be like, huh? I didn't get. So, thank you very much, Ken, for doing that. We do have one email I wanted to read through real quick for Geek Cred. This coming to us from Cupcheck, and it says, "Hey dudes, Cupcheck here, and I'm glad to say I've joined the nerdy realm of vaping. And I suppose that's something that's kind of on that in between of such for geekiness. I have plans.
Is that like the drugs?
It's the little electronic cigarettes."
Oh,
and so
okay.
I have never planned for this to happen until this past Wednesday when a friend of mine asked, "What's your address? I'm coming to kidnap you." We went to a vape shop only to go from a social smoker smoking 1 fill pack a day to smoking 1 to 2 cigarettes each day. The odds are in my favor to be out and about today, so unless something drastic happens, I won't make the game night. Take care, Cup Check. So with that cup, I will say, from being my opinion personally, when it comes to smoking, I think it's disgusting. I hate being around smokers. However, vaping,
Yep.
I can almost get on board with because it's a lot less harsh for the non-smoker vapor to be around.
Totally. I got a brush of like candy floss flavored air
In most cases.
You're like, okay, I don't. mind
However,
this.
I still will make the argument, just because vaping is not smoking, it doesn't give you the right to do it anywhere.
I agree.
Because I don't want you to come into my house and start making it smell like some weird potpourri that I did not put there myself, or whatever, just because you think it's good. And that's the one thing I give people with vaping, is that they try to pull it off everywhere they can. And I think that's a little
kind of a show-off thing,
disingenuous.
isn't it?
You know, they kind of do it like, haha, I'm not smoking, so I'll do this right here around everybody. And it's like, dudes, just stop.
Yeah, people started to do that at work actually. A couple people at the desks, and you know, you look over and you see them. It looks like they're smoking. You know, you just see
Yep.
them. Oh.
Yeah, there's still a social stigmatism about it and everything. There's still something, so I just throw it out there. But good job on switching over, because it is still way better than smoking itself. All right, so with that said, in that email, grats to you, I do want to transition us in to get ready to start just a little bit of talk about the discussion at hand. And so I'll transfer this over and say that we're going to get into...
Technology, news, and more today on the Geekoscope.
And before we take a break, we're going to use the first part, this next like 8 or 10 minutes, to talk about kind of the premise of what we're going to be talking about after the break.
Disclaimer time!
So yes, how should we put this? The views expressed by guests of the
Prepare
shows
to
of
be
Show X
butthurt.
are not necessarily the views of VTWProductions.com or other shows associated with it.
Yes.
So
I have 4, I think, that I want to say.
okay,
Number
disclaimers.
number one, harassment and threats of violence against anyone at any time are always wrong. That is not how you win an argument, either in real life or via the anonymity shield of the internet. So I don't think I have to say that we unilaterally condemn them, because that should be intuitively obvious. Okay. Number 2, oh my god, I just lost my train of thought. Crap.
So yes,
this whole radio
so like
thing
we said,
again, yeah,
the
okay.
whole harassment thing, we can 100% agree. Harassment
Yeah.
is bad in every format. Nobody is above that. Don't harass.
Oh, okay. Number 2, I am trying to piece together the information that I have, and some of this is going to be informative, and some of this is going to be
Opinionated.
opinion/persuasive/ other stuff. So the informative stuff that I have and I'm going to be presenting to you is stuff that I've tried to piece together based on a hashtag called Gamergate that has been moving very, very fast it's been moving fast over the last almost 4 weeks now, but
Yep.
I've only been watching for the last 10 days.
Yeah, and
So-
I've only lightly been watching, and Ken, I don't know how much you've been following.
I've been watching a very biased side of it. I would honestly admit I've seen the I'd say the against side very, very frequently on the sites I tend to frequent, because that seems what the community tends to prefer on those sites. So I'm going to try and keep an open mind throughout and try and not follow the side that I've been reading a lot about. So I want to try and listen to the whole argument.
That's
rather
fair.
than just one side.
That's fair. So I have no doubt in my mind that I may not have everything exactly factually correct.
Okay.
Where I don't know that I have things factually correct, I will try to annotate that thusly. The things that I do think I have correct or have validated myself, I will kind of not annotate those that way.
Okay.
Third, there's every possibility that I'm going to say something that may or may not be offensive to somebody. I have to admit a fair bit of ignorance. I don't necessarily know all the nomenclature for talking about these things, so if I blow it or I say something that I was educated to say 20 years ago when I was taught to be a teacher, sorry in advance.
Well, I mean, we
by
are
all-
the people.
You know what? And by all means, call me out on it. I'll come back on the show and apologize and try to explain what I meant by taking things in context. And if the boys will have me back, I will happily come back and talk and explain myself and so on and so forth. So I think that was it, and maybe there's not a 4.
Okay, so with that...
Oh, no, there is a 4. Sorry.
Okay, go.
Dang it. No, number 4. There are always going to be knuckleheads whenever you put together a group of people, and especially so when groups of people get together on the internet. And it is a disservice to the people who have legitimate gripes and who have bothered to do the research and look things up and make up their own minds and choose to express themselves in a community on the internet, like a Twitter hashtag or a internet forum or a forum thread or whatever, that the knuckleheads then try to adopt and do stupid stuff in the same name, right? And that's happening on both sides of this argument as well. So don't damn a group of people based on what the knuckleheads on one side of that argument are doing. So those are the disclosures.
Okay, so with those disclosures out there and disclaimers, would you do us the favor before we go to our break to get everyone set and what we're going to be discussing? Give what you can the background of what we're going to be talking about after the break.
Man, this whole thing started with a little bit of sex. Okay, so really this thing all did start with the posting of a WordPress blog by a dude who was the boyfriend of a developer, an indie developer by the name of Zoe Quinn. In that blog post contain a whole lot of screen-capped Facebook conversations and revelations about who she had cheated on him with. And a couple of those people, or at least one of those people, were people who were involved with games journalism websites. Specifically one with Kotaku. And his name is not important because he has virtually nothing to do with this. And neither does she, really, in the grand scheme of things. So that led to people asking the question why Kotaku and Polygon and Rock Paper Shotgun and Destructoid and Gamasutra and all of these websites were not talking about this because it had appeared at first that this journalist had written a favorable review of a game that this developer had developed because of the relationship that they had.
Okay.
Now, after some further investigation, it turned out that was false. Okay? But what it did do is it got people looking into the people who work for these websites and the kind of relationships that they do have and the kind of articles that they did write. And people started asking questions. And the editors-in-chief of Polygon and Destructoid and Kotaku and Gamasutra and Rock Paper Shotgun sort of said, no, there's nothing to see here. Don't worry about it. It's no big deal. Don't sweat it. More information started to come out about independent game festivals and relationships that that Zoe Quinn had with people who were both involved in who got submitted to the game festival and then who won awards at the game festival. And then some more questions got asked. And then when I got involved in the hashtag is on August 28th, there were 10 articles posted by 5 different websites that said the gamer identity is dead.
And just for people, I am posting at least 2 of those into the IRC right now so that during the break, as they're listening to the music, they can kind of peruse those to get a better understanding as well.
So gamers are over, and they don't have to be your target audience. And how do we end, meaning kill, the gamer identity? And it's a terrible week to be a gamer, and blah blah blah, and so on and so forth.
Because it means you're misogynistic.
Well, we're not going to get into that yet. Yeah, no, it's just saying in general these articles came out.
I don't.
We'll get
wanna
into that
get
after the break. Yeah.
I don't want to get. Yeah, I don't want to get into that yet. So I got involved in Gamergate at that point and started really watching the hashtag evolve from there. And over Labor Day weekend, it blew up, and YouTubers started talking about it. Total Biscuit posted a big Reddit thread that had something like 25,000 replies deleted by a Reddit moderator who knew the developer that this is kind of all touched this whole thing off. And there were allegedly, and there are again screen caps of Twitter discussions between the two of them, and a lot of this information is really hard to come by because it's Twitter screen caps and things like that. So again, thank you, Ken, for keeping me honest. I'm trying to do a lot of this history stuff from memory.
Yes.
No problem. There's also Facebook threads as well, I believe, between Zoe Quinn and her acquaintances, which have since are condemning and saying they're not real, so it's a lot of controversy whether that's all real. Okay. So it's quite a convoluted thing, the whole thing.
Yes.
So the basics of it is an event happened between a game journalism site, Kotaku, and a couple of other people, which made the whole community of gamers look into corruption within the games journalism industry. At which point, the games journalism industry has some of it, not all of it, has been trying to return and retort with saying, "Oh, you guys are all wrong. In fact, you don't even exist anymore."
Right, and which is what we'll get into after the break, is kind of how this all has played out and where we're at with it today.
Yeah.
So that should give you some background that basically this all started, as Todd was saying, through this initial relationship and that question about game journalism and essentially the integrity of it, or what integrity there is, and kind of how a lot of timed events and how they all came out and how the same message being pushed leads people to believe that there's some angst going on amongst both sides of the group. So keep that in mind. We will take a break. We're going to listen to music from my good friend and the band Edifice, and so we're going to check that out, and then we'll come back and we're going to have a little more heartfelt discussion about this whole Gamersgate controversy that's going on around gaming journalism and gamers today on the web. So with that, you're listening to Show X, and we'll be right back.
You're listening to Show X on btwproductions.com.
One solitary subtle point of light. One sensory perception of his life.
your emails to showx@vtwproductions.com.
All right, everybody, we are back, and we are having ourselves a discussion here, talking about what's been going on in the gaming news recently with Gamersgate. So now that you've had some background on it and maybe a chance to glance over some of the articles around it, let's get into the meat of the discussion.
Whew. Okay. I don't actually want to start talking about Zoe Quinn. I want to start with the fact that Gamergate, it's been accused, and this just broke in the last, 36 hours, was the work of 4chan. That a bunch of people in a 4chan chat room fought up the idea and got it started, and everybody who got involved is just a dupe, and that, ha ha ha, you guys. Well, okay, if that's the case, then you're 2 weeks too late in exposing it. If you had exposed it on day 13, this thing would probably be over and we wouldn't be talking about this right now. But you're now exposing this on day, 26. And it's got a life of its own. And when the anti-Gamergate crowd, I guess is what we'll call them, tried to say that we were all white, basement-dwelling virgins, they spun off, or the Gamergate crowd spun off a second hashtag called Not Your Shield.
Yes.
And you've seen pictures of passports from Tunisia and Vietnam and Russia and, passports from all over the world and women and people of color.
So that piece, this is an important piece of the discussion, because the overall argument that came out from the whole journalism side of the house talking about this Gamersgate issue, as they were essentially responding to with the journalism initially happened when it broke about the possible impropriety between Zoe and some of the journalists' sites, that it talked about kind of, what about integrity, things like that. Some people got very vehement, and this is where we talked about the harassment being a horrible thing, regardless, where they were saying things that are truly you should not put out there. And it's one thing I'll say to kids in general that you seem to keep forgetting, and same thing with people getting in trouble for doing different kind of activities because they think the internet's this fake thing, is that it does reach out in real life. And so you should never threaten people online, especially if you think somehow it's really just a joke, because other people won't take it that way.
If you ever say you're going to rape
I'm going
someone,
to injure
you're gonna
someone,
hurt them,
yes,
anything like that, that's horrific and a disgusting thing to say to another human being.
Can legally be dealt with as though you are actually threatening them. So know that when you say it online, you are saying it. Anyhow, so because of that, there was a lot of negative things that went around, and the journalists got really vehement back because they were saying how bad the, quote, gamer culture was reacting to the story, and that they had harassed people and caused them to feel threatened and like they needed to leave their house, take action with the FBI, things like that. One example being, and I think, Todd, you're going to go this level, was a gal who does video reviews of things, and specifically focusing on where this has gone, which is a lot of the representation of females in gaming, because this is where this is transitioned, right? Because there's two aspects. We need to talk about that piece of where it went that direction and how that's been playing out, as well as what Ken was talking about a little bit before the break, the definition of gamer that is become what now charged into what you're saying with all the passports and such. So we'll talk about the gamer discussion real quick first, because what they've been trying to do from the journalist side is quote that gamers, that tag of gamer, means only white males that are, and what's the word? Misogynistic?
Basement-dwelling misogynist versions.
Yeah, thank you.
Cishet white male basement-dwelling virgins is sort of the string of epithets that's been thrown around.
As well as only into violence, only into sex, only into these kinds of, it's a very narrow vision of kind of what might have been accurate, I would say, back in the late 80s, early 90s. Even then was not truly accurate, but it's kind of what the majority of people thought that term
Well,
meant.
screw you guys. Screw you,
so-
white cis male scum. I'm a demisexual, polyromantic, positive, gender-neutrous, femi presenting with anxiety and PTSD from Twitter. How dare you say that to me?
Hey, hold on. Are those self-diagnosed? Because if those aren't self-diagnosed, you can't be here.
So there you go. So that was the discussion about gamer, and that's important because that was kind of something that was being thrown out there as we talked about the articles they wrote. Now, some of that was also in response, like I said, to how vile some of the responses were to this gal who did a video that was specifically talking about, it's not the first time she's done it, but she brings up articles about how women are portrayed in the gaming world.
Right. So, and the gal's name is Anita Sarkeesian, and she did a Kickstarter for a series of videos called Tropes versus Women in Video Games, and it made on the order of 160 grand. And she's producing these videos, and what we have to do at this point is separate the methodologies and let's say lack of conclusions, because there aren't any in these videos.
Well, and something I will say about the videos is that anyone can have an opinion, and you can bring up what you see as a issue in a society and anything. I mean, it's completely opinion, right? You can do anything like that. That's fine. And I say that because people reacting poorly to that goes back to that first discussion about harassment and how be careful what you do because it's still really harassment. You may truly disagree with someone,
right?
And yet it gives you no right to then threaten them.
Right. So, I don't necessarily agree with some of the methodologies. I think there are 3 instances that I can think of over the hour and a half of video that's out there, where she plays the Bring Me a Rock game. She does it once with Watch Dogs, where she picks out specifically one of the crime fighting or crime prevention distractions where the the estranged boyfriend tries to take revenge on his wife or girlfriend, and it's your job to stop him.
Okay.
And for those that don't have context, the game screams at you for a full 10 seconds once the crime, in air quotes, has started to prevent it. And you have the choice of either doing it in Batman style, the non-fatal way, or as I put it, the Tequila Yoon way from Hard Boiled, the fatal way. Okay. So if you don't do it in the 10 seconds that the game screams at you, obviously the crime finishes, right? And the girl is killed and the guy runs away. And her problem with that was that, number one, the crime was being committed against a woman, and number two, there was no way to check on her or call a paramedic or anything like that. Like
they didn't give it enough outs for the way the gameplay could be played through as a scripted event.
My response to that is, well, if they had put that in the game, then is it then misogynist to have not put in the ambulance ride back to the hospital? Like, if I call the paramedic, then I go kill the bad guy, is it still misogynist? Is it still is it still anti-women? What about the months and months of post-traumatic stress therapy? Like, if Watch Dogs isn't texting your cell phone every other Wednesday at 6 p.m. to log in to go to PTSD group therapy, then this game is obviously anti-women. And so...
Well, the thing is, right?
Essentially... Go ahead,
First of all, you obviously can prevent it, which is what you should do. So it's clearly, if she doesn't do it, then she's to blame, and she is playing a misogynistic character because it's your choice, right? It's effectively a role-playing game at that point. You're playing a role, and you do what you want to do. The developers are heading towards you not being a misogynistic person, but if you choose to do it, you can be one. That's the main point there, right?
That was my thought when I saw it.
Well, the argument I'll put, because I haven't watched her videos, is to say that when you try to, and it's essentially what you were speaking to, Todd, was you can kind of make arguments anywhere you want without having real basis behind it when you very selectively choose an example like that, without it being the whole breadth of what's going on. It's very difficult to program into something every possible outcome, and I can go various channels of where that you can go with that discussion.
Right.
But gotcha. So she did that video. We don't want to spend too much time on that, but
Yeah.
the fact that she did the video, it perhaps is not a fair video, depending on your view, as to making the argument for how women are treated in society, of gaming, and around the culture of it right now. But she does bring up like massive points that she tries to make a big deal about, and she's made a lot of money doing so.
But I want to say, you could question the methodologies and you can question the lack of conclusions at the end, which is something else that bothers me. But there's a discussion that has to be made about representation and the way that women and people of color and LGBTA, and I'm going to lump all of that into how we experience the human condition.
Okay.
Like in all its varieties, right? Take all the various types of emotional problems that people can have and psychological diseases on top of race and gender and orientation and LGBTQ and all of that stuff, right? I mean, the human condition's a big thing. And the way that we deal with that in video games is a discussion that needs to be had. And the way those are represented, right?
Yeah, I'd agree.
Okay, so we need to have a discussion on it. These videos are not the way to do that.
Well, she's obviously doing something that's kind of inciting reaction, and so maybe the reason she doesn't have conclusions is because she wants that discussion to start, but she is starting it in a way that's kind of very blaming.
Well,
and saying like, look, this is wrong.
I would go so far as to say the reason why there are not conclusions in these videos is because these are not about making video games better. These are about acquiring a never-ending string of all expenses paid speaking engagements.
So first of all, a video game is an artistic endeavor, right? So if you made a painting which showed men being attached to chains and whipped and stuff, people might see it as a beautiful thing, as a reverse of the norm, as what you might see in society, and you can see multiple things in that. Why can't we do that with video games? So you see this as a generic representation of what, life should not be. That isn't real life. That is us showing a portrayal of somebody else's interpretation of either their own life or an imaginary tale, perhaps, a work of fiction. It's okay to have another world where that happens occasionally, right?
I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer for that. I don't know.
That's fiction. I mean, we're allowed to have things that aren't correct in our reality because it's fiction, right? And the same way that, like I said, if we had a whole group of slaves in certain games, which you do, where you have to free them or whatever, or you don't, or you enslave them, or you're playing a game where you kill lots of people, there's loads of different things you can do. There's races in games that you kill because they're a different race. I mean, that's literally the basis of so many games because it's a different freaking fictional world. That's the difference. But that seems to not be a point even brought up here because in any of the discussions I've seen anyway online, because they just assume that it's just a portrayal of our real world and somewhere in it,
Well, so the one thing that these discussions, actually two things that these discussions don't acknowledge is the moment of truth and the ability to suspend disbelief. Right? And the moment of truth is that point in time before a person acts in which they make the conscious decision to act. Right? Like, I take the most extreme example. If Wayne and I are in a place and I have a knife, like, there's a moment of truth in which I decide whether or not I'm going to stab Wayne to death. Right? And so at the moment of truth, I either stab Wayne to death or I don't stab Wayne to death. No, I'm not going to stab Wayne to death because Wayne and I are buds, right? So I'm gonna take the knife and I'm gonna cut my steak with it instead of stabbing him to death. And also, as you said, to sort of accentuate your point, Ken, to suspend disbelief. This stuff is fake. And so I set my real life aside Sometimes when I've had a bad day at work, all I want to do is come home, boot up Watch Dogs, and shoot environmentalists in the face. When I walk down the street and CTOS says that person over there is an environmentalist, I want to walk up to him and shoot him. I don't care if they're woman, man, black, white, brown, yellow, it doesn't matter. Sometimes I just want to do that. Does that mean I'm going to go to work the next day and sit outside of the new brand spanking new electrical outlets at work with a shotgun, waiting for the lady with the Chevy Volt to show up and splatter her brains all over the parking lot? I don't think so, because I know the difference. One is fake, one is real life, and I know the difference.
Now, one of the things that's come out, though, even though, yes, I agree completely that it's not reality, and in many ways, games are not meant to reflect reality in 100%, because otherwise, as I've said multiple times, who wants to play a game that's real, because that's no fun. It's not a game.
Well, that's what The Sims is, right?
One of the things that's been discussed is this level of, why aren't we trying to do more with game development than provide these base interactions? Why can't we use gaming to put out things that try to better represent what regular life is like, even though you add those fanciful moments that allow you to game? Can we
then
push
go
those
do that,
Okay.
I'm saying, why moan and bitch and say, why don't other people do it? Why don't you go do it then? You go make that game. You go make the difference in the industry. That's what it's about, right? You have the ability to do that because you're a fellow human being. You can do that. There's nothing stopping you. That's the thing about freedom.
Well,
you can choose to do it.
Ken, we're actually going way to the end of the argument.
I'm sorry.
A half hour before the end of the argument. Well, because the end of this argument is how the discussion that we need to have is, how do we get people of color, women, LGBTQ, how do we get more people of more diverse backgrounds into mathematics and computer science? Because if you get a more diverse group of people into those technical areas, you're going to get more of those people into coding jobs.
Sure,
and if you
definitely.
get more of those people into coding jobs, more of those people are going to make it into game design jobs. And if more of those people make it into game design jobs, guess what? More games like that are going to get made.
And that's a discussion that's brought up, because one of the people that's kind of in this controversy, Dan Golding, on his Tumblr feed, one of the things he talks about is, in video games, does sexism begin at the top? And what he did is he went through his article and he talked about different companies that are big producers of games, like Ubisoft, Deep Silver, Bethesda, Lionhead and such, and went through their execs on top and showed how many of them were men to female ratios. At Ubisoft, there's one woman out of the 5 top execs he listed. Deep Silver, or Koch Media, had no women from the 3 there. Bethesda had 2 women from the 6 listed. BioWare had 1 woman from the 9 listed, which is BioWare / Electronic Arts. It goes through further. Some of the interesting ones I saw that I can actually kind of explain away, but it was like Sony had 1 woman from 9. But other ones was like IO Interactive or Eidos Square Enix was no women on the top board of 6 they listed. Another one of those was Nintendo had no women from the 10 listed, which I go in for one piece there where I'll bring up those just so whatever. Those are Japanese companies, and that's a whole nother, social, you call it, type of
we're talking about a different culture altogether.
Yeah, exactly. It's an entire different culture when it comes to men and women and how they interact.
Yeah.
So for that argument of it, but even from the American companies, you see 1, 2, 3 kind of things. The percentages are lower. However, I say this in an environment where I know in other engineering type things, there's a lot of representation of women at the top, just from my own personal experience.
For example, Hewlett Packard, the CEO, the person who owns the biggest IT company in the entire world, is my equipment.
Exactly. So they are there, but when you talk about gaming, in a way, he does bring up that point that there aren't as many women in leadership roles. However, go ahead.
Sure. I don't want to interrupt, but can I ask just a basic question? It's a bit of a slight rebuttal.
Yeah, sure.
Why does it matter? Because I'm not trying to be mean. I'm genuinely asking. Call it devil's advocate if you like. Because why does it matter? Why do we need to think about that? What is the importance of trying to make sure that we have a 50-50 split in absolutely everything?
I'm not
Because-
I'm not suggesting that we need a 50-50
Oh, I'm not
split.
saying that you either. I'm just saying in general, it's a good question to ask. I mean, why try to fight for something when we don't know why to do it in the first place? It's a
Well,
question that needs asked first. So I would
okay.
say, why do we need to do that? Because the way I see it is biologically, women, men, black people, white people, Asian people are literally biologically different. They literally have different genes, they build them differently, they have different mental processes, different urges and what to do in life, etc., etc. Why should we force us to be 50-50 when that might not even be a good thing to do? Because maybe certain groups of people are better in certain places, not necessarily because they should be there because they are a different color and I dislike them. Maybe it's just because they are biologically prone to do certain things due to their genetics. These are the kind of questions need asked.
Playing devil's advocate, I think the reason why is because the ESA 2013 sort of census of game players, or
that did just recently come out. Yes.
Yeah, that said that like 46% of all game players are female.
Actually, well, I
And
thought
the-
at least one statistic put it at least 51%, depending on what you were categorizing. That there are
Yeah.
now today more female gamers than male
Right,
as a whole.
so there was one set of statistics that said maybe it was over 50%, and there was another set of statistics like if you took out Farmville and Candy Crush, that statistic skewed slightly.
well, it's,
I'm not saying we should use one or the other. I'm not.
well, I
I'm
mean,
not gonna,
apparently
I'm not gonna
based
value
on
judge
well,
one set over the other, but
based on the way the journalists that are part of this discussion have said it, we can't use either of them because according to them, none of those are gamers.
oh right, that's right. It's only white cishet.
So
basement-dwelling.
that poll doesn't even matter. Although I do want to
Violence-
jump to the IRC real quick and say that our lovely Miss Copy, granted Canadian female, does state in there her views, which say feminists in North America need to stop bitching about their first world problems. Go take a stand in a country where women are hung for taking a stand. Go bitch in a country where girls don't have the rights to an education. Sexism in North America is a first world problem. That's just
I
her
would
opinion.
agree with that. Good point.
So, but at the same time, and my wife and I have talked about this a lot. A woman should be able to go into a gaming forum and give her opinion about, say, the female model for the new Assassin's Creed character getting dumped without a whole bunch of people turning around and going, "Oh my God, you social justice warrior! What the hell's the matter with you?"
Yep.
You know,
I agree. I agree.
without-
They are
without-
welcome to do that. That's the point of freedom here, right? We have the ability to ask that question.
Well, what he's saying is they should be able to do that without the expectation being, or the actual result being, a bunch of idiot guys or whomever getting on there and saying,
knuckleheads.
yeah, knuckleheads,
Yeah,
the
of course.
people that are
Yeah,
the
yeah,
worst
that-
part of the group, saying, "Oh, you're just some feminazi. Get out of here. We don't want to hear you bitching." She should be
Right.
able to
That's
say,
not fair.
"Hey, I was really looking forward to playing a female assassin in the future because I'm a girl and I think that's kind of cool."
Right.
I agree.
Definitely.
And the one thing I will give the Tropes versus Women videos to credit is the one game design thing that they did come up with. It's like a 3-minute video. You know, as they described it, it was like, oh, okay, I guess I'd play that game. Like if I ran across it at some point, I wouldn't necessarily go out of my way to play it, but it sounded like Princess of Persia, kinda.
Ah, nice.
Yeah,
whatever.
to which I said, you know what? If somebody was streaming that on Twitch and I saw it and went, "Oh, that's all right."
Well,
Like-
and we are seeing more and more female characters in games. They're doing it in a lot of ways. I mean, honestly, we've seen it for
Portal.
years. Let's go back to Samus and things like that. One of the best examples of all time. But where they're even talking Nintendo, one of these diehard culturally different companies is talking about bringing out a true Zelda title, where Zelda is the protagonist and not
Cool.
just the damsel in distress.
Right.
And I'm actually very much looking forward to see what that'll be like.
That'll be interesting.
You know, we have other games that have a lot of good female characters, the Laura Crofts of the world and stuff like that, which granted started in a pixelated version that was over the top, kind of sexually represented, but has moved to a much more modernized version. And so there are companies that are adjusting for the view of women in gaming specifically. And it's unfortunate that this discussion came up in such a way that it feels as though the journalists have had some kind of what do you want to say? They've like mounted an offense together against those people that they feel are attacking their friends.
They're trying to change, as I put it in my Orwell blog post. They're trying to change the orthodoxy surrounding gaming, right? So you're going to see a lot of, and in fact, you'll see it in the Lee Alexander article, where she says, and I'll see if I can find the quote on the quick. Crap. Oh, here we go. The quote is this: "Now, part of a writer's job in a creative human medium is to help curate a creative community and an inclusive culture, and a lack of commitment to that looks out of step, like a partial compromise with howling trolls who've latched on to ethics, in quotes, as the latest flag in their onslaught against evolution and inclusion." Now, you'll notice the word inclusion has been used in there twice. That's a dangerous word. Okay. And to explain why, I'm going to go to a website that I'm going to link in the IRC real quick. Bam! And I'm going to read only from the definition of inclusion written by Shafiq Asante in 1997. And only part of it, because the first half of it is a story about Rosa Parks. "It's time we both recognize and accept that we were all born, quote, in. No one has the right to invite others in. It definitely becomes our responsibility as a society to remove all barriers which uphold exclusion, since none of us has the authority to invite others in. So what is inclusion? Inclusion is recognizing our universal oneness and interdependence. Inclusion is recognizing that we are one, even though we are not the same." Okay. Now let's focus on one specific part of all of that. To remove all barriers which uphold exclusion, since none of us have the authority to invite others in. Now, on its face, especially when talking about this particular topic, that seems like a good thing, right? Because we're talking about gender and sexuality and race and creed and all that stuff. But that's not what that says. That says removing all barriers, like merit and market forces and self-awareness.
Or capability for a job.
And that's merit. That's exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about. So, here's an example. We grab Sherman in the Wayback Machine and we go back to 1952.
Okay.
Right? And we take everybody in the world, which is what, 4.6 billion-ish?
Okay.
And we hand everybody a test. And we're going to figure out who's going to write the very first orbital dynamics algorithm. But we're inclusive, so we're giving everybody this test. And because we're inclusive, it can't start with calculus and differential equations and dynamics, right? It has to start with arithmetic. So you're going to spend the next, 7 days doing math problems in physics, okay? And then we're going to take all of those tests, and at the very end, we're going to ask you a question: do you want to do this? Yes or no? We're going to take all the yeses and we're going to put them in a pile, and we're going to draw one out randomly. And that person gets the job, regardless of how they scored. And that person gets to write the algorithm that the entire space program for every country in the world is based off of. That's it. That's inclusion.
In essence, what you're arguing is that you can take the concept of inclusion, and if you, it's like many concepts out there. If you take it literally and go 100% into that, it basically breaks the concept.
It doesn't work.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. It's like all things we talk about, be it politics, religions, everything. You take everything specifically literally, and none of them work.
Right. So the basis of little thing is kind of going back to my previous point as well. I said that it does it actually matter? That was my point, right? Does it actually matter if we don't have 50-50 split? If we don't have, for example, in the UK Parliament, people were trying to say a few years ago that we should have 51% of the MPs, the members of parliament, should be female. 51%. So we should force people to do that job, and that was my same point, exactly. But what if there's nobody capable, or nobody wanting to stand? What if nobody wants it? Does that mean we don't have a government? Because that doesn't make sense. Does it mean we get the radical person who fits the job spec because it's a female? We shouldn't employ people based on the fact that they have a specific set of genitals.
According
right?
to inclusive principles, yes, you would force somebody to do that.
Well, and
So
that's
the point is about opportunity then, surely. So the idea is the door is there, now you need to get there. But it's an open market, people have their own opinions of people and stuff, but the law says you have to employ people, no matter what gender or race they are, right?
Right.
That's what the point is.
So let's go back to the Alexander article, because that quote starts, "Now part of a writer's job," and you'll notice there that writer is specifically vague because it doesn't distinguish between the content creator as a writer and the journalist as a writer, right? So the content creator, I don't care what you do as a content creator. If you want to cultivate a creative community and inclusive culture as a content creator, go nuts, right? That's what the market is for. If you want to cultivate an inclusive culture and the market will bear that, good on you. Or if you have sufficient finances to lose money on your project, good on you too, right? That's what the free market is for. However, as a journalist, you have an obligation to report things in a factual and truthful manner. And that obligation is born out of a trust relationship between the people who read your stuff and you as the journalist. Like, by reading an article, if I go to Kotaku and I read something from, say, Patricia Hernandez,
okay.
like, I have an expectation when I read that for that thing to be factually accurate, right?
That would be true for anything that is considered a news source, anything that's not specifically mentioned up as being like opinion,
Correct.
right?
Again, good point.
Well, because you can have opinion pieces on everything. The so-called news stations out there do it all the time. Anything between the middle hours of the day are news. Everything early in the morning or late at night that everybody watches is opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
You stick the op-ed tag on anything.
Yeah.
Right, and then that trust is out the window because it says in big bold letters op-ed.
Yes.
Or this piece is the opinion of blah de blah, so on and so forth. Right, and even the Gamma Sutra op-ed stuff does that. You'll see it in bold letters that such and such is the opinion of whomever, right?
Okay.
However, when somebody like Patricia Hernandez writes an article about the Microsoft briefing at E3 2013, which was 90 minutes long,
okay,
and takes a 3-second throwaway comment out of context and writes a 100-word, 3-paragraph post about how she didn't like the trash talk, trying to lead everybody into, the rape joke that they made against that poor woman on stage. In an attempt to bait people into, 14 months later, 137,000 clicks. That's a violation of that trust.
It's one of those
Just because
things.
you were offended by something doesn't mean you should report it factually.
And I'm going to link it. That's the article that was written. Now, let's add. By the way, one of the things that's also exclusive that inclusion doesn't allow for is context. Now let's add the context filter to what happened at this E3 thing in 2013. It was a 3-minute pre-canned, in professional wrestling parlance, it was a work. Okay. So they set this thing up. They were shilling. I have to look at my notes. They were shilling Smart Glass. They were shilling Killer Instinct. They were shilling Smart Match. They were shilling the Mad Catz arcade fight stick. they were shilling Upload Studio, and they were shilling Twitch integration
Okay.
in this 3-minute thing. Okay? So the first thing that they were doing is they put this community manager named Ashton, who's a girl, and I get why they did this, because the only other female in the entire 90 minutes was Bonnie Ross from 343 Studios.
Okay.
Like in the 91 minutes of presentation, there were 2 women in the whole thing. So I get it, because if they don't do that, guess what? It's a 100-word, 3-paragraph article that says, Microsoft hates women. Right? That you clickbait for 125,000 page views. So I get why she's up there, and she's demonstrating the smart glass, and she's playing Rise, Son of Rome, and then they bring out a producer from for Killer Instinct to play Killer Instinct against this community manager. Well,
Yeah.
they gave him the arcade fight stick. Now, you don't have to be a 30-year veteran of fighting games to
Know the
what's
advantage
going
that
to-
gives?
to know what's going to happen when you give the better control scheme to the better player,
Yeah, that's
the more
duh.
experienced player. Like, he's gonna destroy her. And not because she's a girl and he's a dude, but because the better player has the better control scheme in a fighting game. But because they were shilling the replay features on the Xbox One, he was forced. He was expected to extemporaneously fill that time.
Gotcha. He was basically
So-
talking trash during it and kind of like, bam.
That's exactly what he did. And he, in a 3-second throwaway comment, and she started like, I can't block, like I can't do anything with this controller. Like she was
Yes.
getting frustrated, rightly so, right? I get that. And you would be frustrated, right?
Of course.
So he says, "Don't worry, it'll all be over soon."
He said,
Just as a
he says, just let it happen. It'll be over soon.
yeah.
That is not necessarily anything to do with rape. That's you assuming that is. That's your mind putting that to play.
That is
Well, that's her getting offended at it in that way.
Well, no,
Yeah.
she didn't get it. She is in Patricia.
No,
Hernandez.
not the girl on stage, but the one who,
Right.
Oh,
yeah, the one who wrote the
yeah,
article
yeah.
in Kotaku.
Yeah, so there are 2 she's. I just wanted to make
Yeah,
sure
exactly.
we get the pronouns
Sure.
right. So it's a 3-second throwaway comment in a 90-minute presentation for which you could have told 12 different narratives, right? You
Yep.
could have talked about smart glass integration and how Microsoft was trying to elbow its way into the one company ecosystem that we saw at Consumer Electronics Show 2010 and 2011. You could have talked about how Killer Instinct was a Nintendo property and now suddenly a Microsoft property. You could have talked about if you really needed to push the social justice agenda. You could have talked about how the fact that there were only 2 women on stage in 90 minutes. I don't think that's much of a story, but you certainly could talk about that. You could talk about that frackin' price tag at $500.
Yeah.
Right? You could talk about Twitch integration and how that's great because you don't have to buy peripherals anymore to get your console gaming up on Twitch. Like, there are all kinds of narratives that you could have told from that E3 2013 press conference. What do we get? 3 paragraphs, 100 words, in order to lead people into, oh my god, that rape joke. In a 3-minute pre-canned
Well, and it's
thing
Now-
that they were chilling a whole bunch
I
of
do have-
features and
admittedly,
and
yeah. I was
products.
gonna say I do have a hard time with just this piece of it too, because, and maybe this is somewhat of the commentary around gaming. Who knows? I will tell you that even it being a rape joke does not mean it has anything to do with the fact that she's female. And I say this because those kind of jokes are made all the time in gaming, whether that's good, bad, or ugly. And normally I have experienced it around guy-on-guy issues. Let's talk about prison rape or something if you want to put it in context. But essentially with that issue of someone getting destroyed in a way they can't do anything about, which if you kind of look at the definition of the term rape, is pretty much accurate. And so whether you call that joking or not, if you just look at the term of rape itself, I mean, if taken out of the sexual content piece of it, that's exactly what happens in games a lot. And it is violent and usually not something the other person wants to partake in. And so I'll put that in there, and that can put me in a bad light, I guess. But
so to add to you misogynist, so to add to it, a little bit later on, Torin is the guy's name, I think. He starts throwing fireballs in Ashton's face, right? And he throws 3 of them, and he goes, "Man, you like those?" And I don't think she heard him say those.
Okay.
Meaning the fireballs that she was eating.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like in League of Legends when you catch Nidalee spears all day long, or any of those kind of games where it's like, well, yep, I just keep seeming to get hit by that.
Yeah. He said, "Oh, you like those?" And she said, "No, I don't like this." Meaning she was getting her ass handed to her and getting frustrated by it. And rightly so, right?
Understandable, yeah.
I mean, I get it. So that added some fuel to the fire. Now, again, for a little bit of context, this little work was right in the middle of the presentation. Like, if this had been the last thing they had done, and this was the last taste in your mouth...
if that's what they were ending it on?
Like, if that was the go-home, it would almost be forgivable. Because that would have been your last impression of the Microsoft presentation.
Yeah.
Like, you could have written about how much of a disadvantage it is to go first at a E3. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Because, I mean, the rumors were that Sony started rewriting their presentation, like, immediately after Microsoft
as soon as in response to the stuff that's being said by your competitors.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if they actually did, but that was the rumor, like, immediately afterwards.
It sounds smart. Why not?
Well, yeah. Are you kidding? I'd rewrite as much as that as you possibly could. So, I mean, that's just one example. Like, Patricia Hernandez is like the poster child for corrupt games journalism. 2 more examples that are...
Again, this was an example of journalists that were just taking it too far, trying to create a point in an area that maybe didn't really have it there. So I do want to get back to a piece that we're talking about the whole gamer thing when it came to this overall discussion and what they were trying to redefine gamers as. But because that's where a lot of fire came back from the gamer side, because it's kind of gotten where the journalists banded together and they essentially attacked gamers, because gamers were the knucklehead pieces of them were coming out saying that, we're basically attacking these women for their views. And again, we've already said you shouldn't do that. Let people have their opinions. If you disagree, don't listen to them, don't follow them. Or if you disagree with them in an intelligent way. It serves your purpose much better. But I do want to go, because one of the things they tried doing in this attack, which is something that I think all of our listeners should pay attention to, is we already talked about how they tried to call gamers the just white male, misogynistic, all this stuff where it's just how they tried to limit it. They went further than that to say that gaming as a term essentially is dead. And that there are no more gamers. That gamers, that idea they had, are a thing of the past. The reason I want to bring that up, there was one specific one from Dan Golding's discussion on his Tumblr that I keyed in on, a paragraph where he said, when over the last decade the playing of video games moved beyond the niche, the gamer identity remained fairly uniformly stagnant and mobile. Gamer identity was simply not fluid enough to apply to a broad spectrum of people. It could not meaningfully contain, for example, Candy Crush players, Proteus players, and Call of Duty players simultaneously. When video games changed, the gamer identity did not stretch, and so it has been broken. And therefore saying that basically the term gamers and gamers themselves is dead and gone. Now, I bring that up specifically because, in my opinion, I think that takes a very narrow view of what gamers are in the gamer industry and what we've talked about. Because even as I see Gnomewise jump into the IRC here to say that the casually hardcore crew is coming up after us on Alpha Geek Radio, that in itself speaks to the fact that I think gamers, those of us who do identify with enjoying gaming, as a community have expanded that term. Because we've talked about casual gaming, hardcore gaming, and just these whole wide applications of what the term gamer means. And we've even created our own subcultures of what gamers are. But it's amazing to me that game journalists have not been able to pick up on that, and that they somehow think that that gamer terminology only exists around this very tiny and narrow view that box they're creating. Because I don't think it's reality. I don't think they're true reporting on reality.
There are ulterior motives to this, right? The creation of this new orthodoxy has an ulterior motive to it, right? So if you change the definition of game and gamer and all of that, then when you're writing about games and the PR company that you own at the same time, like your buds, if all you need to make a game is baby's first HTML book, then your buds can all make choose your own adventure books in electronic form, call them games. You can do PR for them on social media in the morning, write glowing reviews on them on Kotaku and Gamasutra in the afternoon, and then blast anybody who goes, those aren't games, as misogynists and sexists and pro-rape culture after dinner. Right? So this is as much about inventing new markets for other business interests as it is about trying to say that we as gamers are dead.
So I can see your point there. I have an issue with, because I don't see what changes them from doing that regardless, although taking away from the being able to specifically call out people that disagree with them or try to call them out there for what they're trying to push as a game, and giving them a convenient title to say they're this antiquated kind of concept. Because I would say there's nothing that stops their friends from creating whatever kind of games they want to try to push on people. Be it them making a digital version of a choose your own adventure game, like you said, or a book, essentially like that, and calling it a game. They can do that all they want. Regular gamers, people who identify themselves as gamers, can choose whether or not they accept that definition as a game and whether they will follow those people or not. And so it's unfortunate, I feel as though, that they are pushing to try to change the terminology in any way. I
think if you try to get a group of entire people, whatever they're called, be it female, black, or by what they do, such as everybody chooses their religion after all, so you can be religious or whatever, or what you do with your life is in gaming as well. If you take a whole group of people and then try to dump them in some negative way, like saying all Jews do this, all Christians do that, all black people do this, all white people do that, guys do this, girls do that, gamers do this, book readers do that, you are an idiot, sir, because that is not what happens, because we are all different people. We're all unique little snowflakes. And so not every single gamer is a male, cis, white, straight male. It works in IT, although that kind of does describe me.
That's okay. You're European, Ken, so you have less privilege than I do.
That's exactly, yeah. So don't put so many people in one big group and then turn that bucket upside down. That's not how that works. It's not how it works.
We have about 4 minutes left. Can we talk about response? Because I've been trying to follow as much of the response as I can. Kind of from both sides, and to me, they kind of come in two buckets.
Okay.
There's the one bucket that starts with Anita Sarkeesian, Zoe Quinn, and harassment that ends up being spun as very anti-Gamergate. And there are the articles that start with, yes, the Gamergate started with Zoe Quinn and the Five Guys and led to questioning relationships and censorship on boards, and then led into questioning ethics in game journalism, and is leading all these other positive things that are very pro-Gamergate. Okay. Now, Ken, is that your impression?
Seems that way. I think there are, of course, people in the middle ground as well who are unsure and don't quite have all the facts, which is understandable. But again, I think both extremes are wrong, to be honest.
Well, I was going to say, I've seen a whole nother piece of that, which is those of us who've not really seen any of this. which is kind of its own level because you have the people on those, on either side that are really into it. But even from our audience, there's most people, it sounds like, that weren't even really aware that the issue was going on, and for better or worse.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. So again, I don't even remember how I ran across it. Anyway, so I think I read some article someplace. It may have come up on my Twitter as one of the 2 minutes hate posts on August 28th. So I think that's where I ran across it.
All right, so I think it's been a good discussion. I think we've got a little bit of both sides. Yeah, you've done very well doing the devil's advocate stuff there, Wayne. So thank you for that, sir.
Well, it's something. Yeah, we need to close up the show so we can pass things on. I will advertise for everyone. Make sure that if you have questions or comments or want Octale Todd to come back and discuss this more, please email into showx@vtwproductions.com. Yes, Todd, real quick.
I'm happy to come back and talk about this. So I want to talk real quick about conclusions. Number one, we definitely have to have a talk about representation. How we represent women, people of color, as I called it, sort of the overall human condition, and how they're represented in our games. We have to have a very, very serious discussion, and it's been that way for 2 decades, about how we get people of color, women, and LGBTQ people into mathematics and computer science. Like, that's the big one. That's the solving the problem instead of curing the symptom, to my mind. Those are two big problems we have to have, and we need adults in order to have them. And I'm gonna drop a bad word, but all this S-flinging, I guess I didn't drop a bad word.
Good job.
All of this S-flinging that's going on between people who want to scream inclusion at the top of their lungs and people who want to harass anybody who says the word inclusion is helping nobody to have that discussion. So,
yep,
they're discussions that need to be had. I'd love to have them. I'm in no position to broker a deal with anybody, so I don't get to have that discussion.
Gotcha.
But I'd love to have it.
Well, sir, you're always welcome back on the show anytime to discuss things, but I'm going to close things out now, if that's all right with everybody. Thanks for having us be on the show, though, Todd. Do you have anything you'd like to pimp out before you go? Before we head off?
I'm streaming on Twitch occasionally, on twitch.com/Octale. That's where you'll find me playing some Isaac, playing some other things. It'll probably be Dead Rising 3 in the next week or so. That's it.
Cool. Thanks for being on the show with us. We always do enjoy it. Now, before we head out, I have one quote to do and then some spiel. This does have a swear, and I am going to use it. It is now very common to hear people say I'm rather offended by that, as if that gives them certain rights. It's actually nothing more than a whine. I find that offensive, has no meaning, it has no purpose, it has no reason to be respected as a phrase. I am offended by that. Well, so fucking what, says Stephen Fry in The Guardian, June 2005. Point being, everybody's entitled to opinion, and everybody's entitled to ignore it as well. With anything in life. So with that, check us out on twitter.com. Go to twitter.com/VTWShowX, twitter.com/DocDead, twitter.com/TheOctale, or twitter.com/GoHex. Check us out on Facebook, ShowX there. Check us out on Patreon. We have a new Patreon. Go to patreon.com/ShowX. There you can give us a couple pennies per month to say thank you. We would appreciate all the little help. Every little helps, as they say. Check out the forums. Go to VTWProductions.com. Check on the forums at the top and send us in emails. showx@VTWProductions.com. Thanks for having us on the show, sir.
All right, thank you, everybody, and make sure you check the show notes or all the details and things like that on the forum. So we'll catch you again next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye!
Goodbye. See you in the next zombie. Good night. Also, good.
Hey, this is John DiMaggio. You're listening to VTWProductions.com. So don't stop listening. Continue to listen. Why are you not listening? Wait a minute. What?